Julia packed her bags meticulously, each item a piece of the puzzle in her carefully devised plan. The weekend retreat was supposed to be a joyous family reunion at a remote cabin, but for Julia, it was the stage for unveiling the painful truth she discovered only a few weeks ago. The drive up to the cabin in the mountains was quiet. Mark, her husband, tried to fill the air with trivial chatter, oblivious to the storm that was about to break. When they arrived, the setting sun casted a warm glow over the cabin. Its inviting light belied the tension Julia felt. Lisa arrived shortly after them. The young woman, who was a friend of their daughter, was the center of the storm that had engulfed Julia's family. Julia watched her lock eyes with Mark, a silent conversation going on between them. She pretended she didn't notice. Dinner was served with an air of strained cordiality. The table was set for 6, though at the moment only 4 people were present. The others would arrive the following day, exactly as she had planned. She excused herself early, retreating to her and Mark's bedroom under the guise of tiredness. There, she retrieved a small, velvet pouch from her suitcase. Inside was a digital recorder, its contents damning enough to shatter several lives. For now, its secrets remained hers alone. Carefully, she stashed it somewhere nobody could find it until the time was right, just as a precaution, in case things didn't go as she'd planned. In the quiet of night, Julia lay awake, the silence of the cabin oppressive around her. Mark slept beside Julia, with his back turned to her, no worry in the world. As dawn broke, Julia announced over breakfast that she had planned several team-building exercises for the group. Unbeknownst to her guests, these activities were designed to coax secrets into the open and provoke confessions. Julia clapped her hands, grabbing everyone's attention. "Let's start with a trust walk," she announced cheerily, looking directly at Mark and then Lisa. They looked uncomfortable, maybe even guilty, as they took their places at the start of the designated path. "You need to guide your partner blindfolded across the room using only your voice," she stated, emphasizing the need for close communication. As Mark guided Lisa, his voice was cautious, his instructions overly detailed and hesitant, and Julia watched from the sidelines, her arms crossed, endorsing every touch, every word. Around them, the atmosphere thickened as other participants noticed the chemistry between Mark and Lisa. They seemed pretty close, one guest whispered, nudging another. Julia stood back, a slight nod of satisfaction crossing her features as her plan unfolded. Julia called Sarah to her side with a nod, pairing up for the next activity. As they prepared, Mark and Lisa tried to continue their task, but Lisa's eyes kept darting towards Julia, clearly nervous. Julia and Sarah pretended to focus on their own activity, but kept a close watch on the uneasy pair, ready to put the next phase of their plan into action. Feeling the weight of the room's focus, Lisa blurted out, "Isn't it odd that Kim isn't here?" She tried to sound disappointed, hoping to divert attention from herself. Lisa's comment about Kim's absence stirred curiosity among the guests. Whispers spread quickly through the room as they questioned why the couple's daughter would miss such an important family gathering. During the next team-building exercise, Julia found herself paired with Mark. As they stood together preparing to start, Julia's demeanor suddenly became serious and detached. Mark felt the shift in Julia's demeanor and leaned in, his voice low with concern. "Is everything all right?" he asked, searching her face for signs of the familiar warmth. Julia offered him only a vague smile, her response cool and detached. Just focusing on the exercise, her tone was smooth, her expression unreadable. He attempted to engage her with small talk and teamwork cues, but Julia's responses were curt and non-committal. Mark's discomfort was palpable, shown in his furrowed brow and constant, uneasy glances towards Julia. This unusual behavior fueled the guests' speculations. As quiet murmurs filled the air with intrigue, Gins unable to contain his frustration, Mark confronted Julia at the first chance he got away from the group. "Are you intentionally sabotaging our teamwork?" he accused, his voice tense and laden with a mix of confusion and distress. Julia's face momentarily betrayed her anger following Mark's blunt accusations. Sarah intervened decisively. She gently grasped Julia's arm, pulling her to the side. The atmosphere had become too tense, so Julia suggested they all take a break and head indoors for lunch. As everyone moved into the dining area, there was a palpable sense of relief. At lunch, Julia took a moment to address everyone. "I apologize for the tension earlier," she began, her voice steady. Julia returned to the bedroom under the pretense of needing something from the bathroom. Instead, she quickly lifted a loose floorboard and retrieved the hidden digital recorder. She held it in her hand for a moment, feeling its weight and the gravity of what it represented. After ensuring it was still functional, she carefully placed it in her pocket. Once everyone settled around the campfire at the beach, Julia suggested a storytelling session to pass the evening. "Let's share some stories," she proposed with a casual tone, sparking interest among the group. Julia strategically asked Sarah to start the storytelling. "Sarah, why don't you kick things off?" she suggested, nodding encouragingly. As Sarah prepared to speak, Julia fixed her gaze on Mark, her look pointed and deliberate. Farah began with what seemed an innocent tale about how she first met Mark. As she wove her story, subtle hints of past flirtations began to surface. As Sarah's story unfolded, revealing more about her ambiguous relationship with Mark, the atmosphere around the campfire shifted. Mark's discomfort became palpable. He glanced around nervously, his eyes darting to gauge the reactions of the group. Julia watched the group's reactions intently as Sarah's story neared its climax. She was ready to take over the storytelling at just the right moment to maximize the impact. Continuing from where Sarah left off, Julia took the lead in the storytelling with a calm yet firm tone. She seamlessly transitioned into her part of the story. Mark promised it would never happen again, she continued, her eyes briefly meeting Mark's before returning to address the group. Her recounting was factual, yet each word was weighted with the gravity of betrayal. After discovering the truth, Sarah and I became friends, she disclosed, her voice carrying a hint of triumph. This alliance had been formed in the wake of shared betrayal, a strategic move that neither Mark nor the others had anticipated. Julia then made a bold move. She played the recorded evidence. The crisp sound of Mark's voice admitting his indiscretions filled the air, unfiltered and undeniable. As the recording played, Julia watched the group's reactions, each face reflecting shock and disbelief. Sarah, who Mark first cheated with, became my ally, Julia revealed, her voice steady but impactful. She detailed their careful planning, driven by a shared sense of betrayal and a desire for justice. As they left the cabin, Julia knew she had restored some balance to the scales of justice, but not without personal cost. She had taken decisive action against Mark, ultimately choosing to divorce him. Before departing, she told him it was his responsibility to explain everything to their daughter, Kim, himself. This decision was painful yet necessary, a step towards healing and accountability that left her with a bittersweet sense of closure.